Samia from the UK.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Sheikh, my question is, my husband was passed away last year, and I am living in UK with two of my kids. And I have no family in this country, all of my family and my husband's family live in Pakistan. So this thing is always bothering me. Can I live in this country or not? My kids don't want to go back home, but they are not that big. My daughter is 15 and my son is only 11. So I can take a chance now, but in back home, I have no one to, take care of myself. Like I can, whenever I ask my family, I want to move back home. I have a roof for living, a small house, but I have no one to, feed me or my kids. So this thing is bothering me every day.
So how are you being fed in UK?
From last 14 years.
Yes.
So
how are you being fed? You said you don't have anyone to feed you in the UK, in Pakistan. So who's feeding you in the UK? Benefits?
No, my husband do work, but it's the main source is definitely Allah, not my husband, no anyone.
You said he died last year.
Yeah, he died.
So now who's feeding you? How are you making ends meet?
Yeah, after my husband, I am on benefits. Yeah, so...
if this is the case, if you don't have anyone to take care of you and take your responsibility, and you know that you will fall into poverty and need because no one is man enough in your family to take care of you and your kids, then yes, you may stay in the UK due to necessity and due to the need of making ends meet. But this is not the ideal way. The dangers of living in a kafir country, especially on children, especially on their sexuality and on their Islam, is clear to anyone who has eyes. And the amount of counseling sessions I get from complaints of such problems for people in the US, in Canada, and Europe is heartbreaking. People went there to make a better living, ending up with their children becoming transgender or gay, or leaving Islam altogether, not interested in praying, not interested in anything, because they've been brainwashed. And the whole community is supporting them and giving them thumbs up if they just join the dark side of the force, as they say. And this is very sad, but you brought this to yourself and your family. So you have to evaluate your situation and decide what it is best for you. The norm is that Muslims live among Muslims. Regardless of hardship, this is the easiest way to maintain and preserve their Islam, and Allah knows best. Neela from Bangladesh.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, which one is better for night prayers, holding the mushaf and reciting long surahs with less khushu, or reciting the same two surah out of memory with more khushu? Barakallahu fikum.
Ufikum barakallah. This is a question that so many people ask frequently in Ramadan. What is best, quality or quantity? Now, scholars differ, but the most authentic opinion that is logical, and according to the scholars as well, is that quality always comes first. Because the Prophet ﷺ told us about the Khawarij, and he told us how we resent and look down upon our own forms of worship compared to theirs. So they prolong their salat, they fast long days, where we would think that, what are we compared to them? And they recite the Qur'an day in, day out. And the Prophet said their Qur'an does not exceed their throats, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Which means that quantity is not essential. It has no value. The Prophet said it's zero. Quality is what counts. When you ponder upon one ayah repeating it like the Prophet used to do, alayhi salam, with the dua of Prophet Isa and Prophet Ibrahim. In tu'adhibhum فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ. And he keeps on repeating it and pondering upon it. This is quality. Now, in Ramadan, there are so many reports that the Salaf used to recite a lot of the Qur'an, 10 times, 20 times. Assuming these reports are valid and correct, they used to ponder on what they recite because they knew the meanings of it. So they went for quality and quantity. For us, it is best for us to recite and ponder with quality rather than just focus on the quantity. Revising only two surahs from your memory at times may work for a day or two, but then a person would become habitual with it and it would become standards that he doesn't pay attention to. That's why reading it from the Quran with trying to ponder upon the verses and to ask Allah for forgiveness when you pass by an ayah of hope and mercy, and ask Allah for refuge when you pass by an ayah of torment, that would be way better, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Sad man from Bangladesh.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, so my question is, what if I pray in a mosque where the Imam prays Khatam Taraweeh in such a way that it gets finished on the 27th of Ramadan? It has been going on for since many years. So it's quite common in Bangladesh to believe that the 27th of Ramadan is the confirmed date of Laylatul Qadr. So what if he believes that? I don't know whether he believes that or not. And besides, also, what if he believes that it's sunnah to complete the Holy Quran in the Taraweeh? So does it affect my prayer behind him?
It has no impact on your prayer. You can pray, and as we said earlier, finishing the Quran during Ramadan is a highly recommended sunnah. Believing that it is mandatory to finish it in Taraweeh is not. But it is not an innovation. If a person wants to recite the whole Quran during Taraweeh, that's a good job. No problem in that. But it is not mandatory. This is the distinction. This is the difference. As for finishing it on the 27th, a lot of scholars believe that the 27th is the Laylatul Qadr, though this is not the authentic opinion. But due to the presence of dispute and difference of opinion among scholars, there's no problem of him finishing it on the 27th. Is it sunnah? Of course not. It's not sunnah. But we wouldn't go to the extent of saying, oh, your salat is invalid, go choose another masjid. This is too extreme. Misha from Bangladesh.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, while offering salam during prayer, for example, I am offering salam on right side and I say Assalamu alaikum, and then I again say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and I again repeat wa rahmatullah due to pronunciation mistake. Sometimes I repeat the whole salam, sometimes I only repeat that specific part. It's not like I am unable to pronounce it. I am able to pronounce it outside the prayer correctly, but during prayer, most of the letters is not clear, so I repeat it. So I'm confused. When should I offer sujud as-sahu?
Misha, you're crazy. With all due respect, how long you've been a Muslim? Misha?
I'm by-born Muslim.
How old are you?
22.
How long you've been praying? 17 years, 15 years?
Almost.
Almost. You're crazy. What's your name? Misha?
Maisha.
Maisha, okay. How long did it take you to say your name? 1 second, correct?
Yes.
How many times do you say your name per week?
Not that much.
Maybe 3 times if someone asks you. So
Yes.
your name, which you do not say except very few times a month, you manage to say it in 1 second without any problem. While saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, which we say twice every prayer, and we have 17 rak'ah in fard, makes it 34 times in fard prayer. And if you add to that the voluntary prayers and the night prayers, that makes it up to 100 a day. Other than the times we enter places and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, how are you? Which makes it gazillion times in 15 years of your life. And you're telling me that you're mispronouncing it, though you've said it hundreds and thousands of times, while your name that you say a few times a month, you say it in 1 second? Loka, there's something crazy about you. And this is how we do in our counseling sessions. We open people's eyes. This is not mispronunciation. This is control of shaitan over you, and it's your mistake. You're opening the door. Never repeat it. Even if you make a mistake, don't repeat it. And don't make sujood as-sahw, unless you want to destroy your salat, your iman, and your life.